What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the show. Just want to thank you guys so much for showing up again. And today we have a really cool guest for you. I can't wait to introduce him. So he is the founder of Brainiactics, which is a movement designed to help expert entrepreneurs in the knowledge industry create transformational results for their clients. So his background stems from more than 10 years of experience in entrepreneurship, growing his first company from the ground up to a level where he could actually step out of the day-to-day operations and serve solely in a visionary role. And through this experience, he was able to gain tremendous amount of experience in all facets of business, from systems and culture to sales and marketing. And in 2018, he actually decided to pivot his attention to the e-learning and digital marketing space. After which 2 years, he says he started working in, after 2 years of working in that industry, he decided to launch a new initiative to help expert entrepreneurs and began innovating unique methodologies to virtual coaching and consulting that measures results by transformations over transactions, which is really, really powerful. So please welcome to the show, Mr. Jake Anderson.
Welcome, Jake. That's awesome.
I appreciate it. I'm so happy to be here. This is definitely a podcast I've been just really looking forward to being part of. And I just think you guys are doing an amazing job with communicating such a powerful message to the entrepreneurial world.
Thanks, brother. Definitely good to have you on the show, man. Appreciate you taking time out of your day to do this with us for sure. Before we get started, I actually kind of wanted to go back to where we all sort of met, the three of us, which was at Funnel Hacking Live. And for those of you listening, that's a really cool marketing event. But anyway, I more so than when we met, I was wondering what actually was your biggest takeaway from that event? Because it was incredible, man. There was so much knowledge and speakers there. I'm just interested, what was your main takeaway?
Yeah, absolutely. So that was my first Funnel Hacking Live. I had never attended one in the past. In fact, it was really the first major business conference I had ever been to. Like, I'd never been to any kind of a gathering of that, especially of that magnitude before. So going into it, I was thinking about like what's the intentions here? Like what you have to go, anything you do, you should have some intentionality behind it. Like, what is my goal? What am I trying to take away from this? Mm-hmm. So for me, it was really two things. It was just number one, building relationships. It's interesting because as you're in the online business, everybody's so two-dimensional, and it's just like little circles with profiles and emojis and text, and then you get right. Some opportunities like this where you see each other, through a live stream. But then you go to a live event, and everybody turns into 3D, and there is this unique exchange of energy that happens in a live event that you'll never get in the virtual world. So for that, I definitely recommend. Like, that was a big takeaway just in that itself. Is like, wow, there's a lot of power to live events because, Nathan actually was one of the first people I met. I think we met like one of the first nights. And I remember just like thinking the energy exchange is just so different. So that was one big takeaway, just within the relationship building aspects, like the people who I actually met there, who I also were communicating and collaborating with online. I feel like our relationships were kind of taken to another level because of that energy exchange. The second thing, when I was going into Funnel Hacking Live, I was still kind of lacking direction, and I was really hoping to get some more clarity around how I wanted to serve and the pivot point that I was trying to take from there. So during the whole conference, I was either communicating with people. Nathan will tell you, we had some good conversations, about certain things, and it's just me just trying to like capture the genius and trying to find clarity into the direction I need to go. So it was either that, I'm like scribbling out all these notes, I'm sitting there like mapping things out in my notebook, and then there's also the actual live training and speaking, the speakers that come on stage.
Well, let me jump in, man, because I did see you and I did see how you're going through, and so what was really cool is so like we all have different approaches to how we're engaging with the community, and so you were trying to offer value to people and then also ask, and you were open to what I thought was really cool is you were extremely open to all the feedback that you were getting. Like you said, you were opening yourself up to that genius, and I think as rising entrepreneurs, right, like we we rising entrepreneurs are out there trying to get better, but sometimes we feel like we have to posture in a certain way, and we feel like we have to posture and be like we're the guru, and I know I need to know the most, and you were out there open-minded, and I believe that we as rising entrepreneurs need to stay open-minded so that we can rise up to the next level. And it sounds like you got a lot of leveling up. Now, I'd also want to say, not all events are the energy of Russell's event. Russell is a master, and that is the most well put together show of aside from Tony Robbins probably of all time. But so your first one, you picked a really good one, and and I really think you used it well.
The bar was set high.
Yeah, right. Well, I think what you said, man, about coming to the event with intentionality, like having really a purpose for being there and sort of setting that intention before you walk into this craziness of what the event actually was. I think that was really smart, because I remember my first year going to FHL, dude, and I did not have that I guess frame to look through. I just went, like bushy eyed, and like, oh, this is going to be amazing. Right. And it sort of blew by me. You know what I mean? It was an experience, but it just kind of blew by me. And I walked away with all these notes, but really no action steps, not really knowing what I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. So I think that's a great point, man. And for anybody that is going to events, that's going out there to, to these networking things and marketing events, not just going just to experience the event, but actually setting that intentionality. Who do you want to meet? What do you want to learn? Like, what's the reason that you're going to go there, and not getting distracted by, the shiny stuff? That's a good point for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that goes with anything you're doing. Just having intentionality behind it really helps drive results a lot faster than, and this doesn't have to be something you overthink. I mean, it could be as simple as like just knowing what you're doing and why you're there,
mm-hmm.
And thinking from the standpoint of, even if it's as simple as like, I just want to build some relationships, and these are the things that I'm trying to get out of these relationships more specifically, and getting as specific as you possibly can, because it can be tough, especially when you're starting out. It can be tough to figure out what are the intentions.
Right.
Why am I here? I don't know. I'm just trying to figure out how to be an entrepreneur, and here's a place of entrepreneurs. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, for sure.
Because
speaking of just getting started, man, let's talk about your startup and how you kind of got into all of this entrepreneurship. Is this something that, like, have you always been an entrepreneur, or did this just kind of happen over time? Like, take us back to the beginning.
Yeah. So I discovered, I guess, maybe let me reframe this. I got bit by the entrepreneur bug when I was 18 years old. So half my life. I'm 36. I actually just turned 36 on Friday, believe it or not.
That's right, man. Yeah,
happy belated birthday.
That's right.
Yeah, thank you. So I got bit by the bug when I was 18, and I went to college. I studied. Actually, I changed my major the first day of college because I went into the business school, and I said, I want to be an entrepreneur. This is what I want to do. I want to do business. And they're like, okay, well, you got to pick a concentration, which was like either management or finance or accounting, marketing. I think there was, anyway, there was a couple other ones I can't remember. Econ, computer information management systems. And I thought, at the time, well, I feel like figuring out the money side is going to be the most challenging part. So I chose finance. So I studied finance. And then early, it was in 2008. And I always try to figure out how I can trim this story down to like make it not a 3-hour conversation, because it's actually a pretty long story. But in 2008 was when I took my first step into entrepreneurship, and I was living actually where I'm living now in Roanoke, Virginia, Southwest Virginia area. If anybody's familiar with that, it's a beautiful mountain. And my mom had like 26 acres of property, family land. So I bought a 1979 Winnebago and was going to live in it on this property like the Unabomber. and I started writing this business plan that was terrible. But it was something, right? It was at least something. And I took some action on something. I established a mentorship with somebody in the concert, the big concert production and entertainment type industry. That mentorship was a failure, or it actually turned into a partnership. It ended up being a failure for the first 4 years. And through that time, I actually ended up moving to Richmond, Virginia, and I started really studying the markets of special events and weddings. And I found some very evident points of failure And that's when I niched down into an event lighting design with opening an event lighting design company in 2012. And I also learned, there was a lot that I learned through those 4 years, but I launched that company and it actually doubled in growth the first 4 years. And I didn't realize at the time, but I was actually doing a Dream 100 strategy without realizing that that's what it was. But that's how I grew the business. I didn't advertise. I barely posted anything on social media. And it still doubled in growth. The biggest thing was finding where to innovate at the points of failure within the market. So actually within the first 18 months, I put my primary competitor out of business.
Wow.
Because I had consumed so much market share because they weren't innovating. They were complacent.
So real quick, can I jump in because I think points of failure sounds intriguing and I'm just, but I'm a little curious as to, what that means to you when you say points of failure. Like, make it kindergarten dumb for me. What does that mean?
Okay. So points of failure, and they exist really in every market. There's points of failure that exist in terms of where, I've actually charted this out in terms of figuring out how to innovate especially within a red ocean, because the market I went in was bloody red, but everybody were carbon copies of themselves. So
right.
You look at that and you think, I look at customer experience first, and I think, how are these companies failing their customers? Even if it's in a small way. So I look at the customer experience, and you can find that out just by naturally talking with people in the industry, and then you discover, for instance, for the lighting companies, they were all not considering design within how they service their customers. They were treating it like a commodity.
Right.
And I actually saw that, no, this is part of the room's design. So I'm going to craft an experience on how to make this a design. So that's an example of a point.
Okay. So I love this. So like Rising Entrepreneurs, what he's talking about is what we call, authentic market value. But when he's talking about these points of failure, he's uncovering points where other people in the market are failing their clients. And that's a really cool way to look at it, right? Because it's like, this is my opportunity. Where I got these people I'm trying to serve in my market we got these people we're trying to serve in our market. And it's like, how can I serve them? How can I give my thing? But he's taking this approach of, where are other people letting them down? Where are they failing the people that I want to serve? And then I can address those points of failure and create my niche, create my space out of these points of failure. And so that's why I want to dig in. I figured there was something more.
No, dude, that's that's actually a better explanation than I've ever used. That's perfect.
Yeah, that's awesome, bro. So let's get. I just want to interrupt real quick. Let's get back to your story. So you've got this lighting design. You've identified some gaps in the market, some places where your people aren't being served. You built up the value and created a package and an experience that gave the events what they needed. And then it sounds like from your bio that from there you worked up to be the visionary in the business, which allowed you to look at it differently. So kind of take us to that point. You're growing over 4 years now. You worked your way out to where you're the visionary, and I'm sure that's probably a whole episode and thing in and of itself of how you do that. But that's so specific to a certain stage. So kind of keeping broad, as the visionary, take us to that point.
Yeah. So the special events industry is a extremely demanding business or industry to serve in itself. And you have to, if you think about it, you have somebody's wedding, which is supposedly one of the most important days of their life.
Right.
And it's on this Saturday where there's 5 hours with tens of thousands of dollars, sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars invested into that 5 hour time frame. And you can't mess up, because you don't go back after the wedding and say, hey, everybody, you know what? The lighting company really dropped the ball here. Can y'all fly back in and let's redo this again? There are no redos, right?
Right.
So it's a pretty for that reason, it was very stressful, and it was really hard for me to let go. And because I was so afraid, and the reputational risk is really high in that industry, because if you mess up, then all the industry will catch on that, hey, this don't deal with them, because they're going to come in. I remember the last wedding, they screwed this up and they're a bad company to work with. And when one vendor screws up, it affects all the vendors.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It ripples through. And so there's really high reputational risk. So for that reason, it was really tough for me to let go. And I knew that my company was growing so fast that I had to figure this out, because if not, it's just going to run me straight into the ground. And I can't wear every single hat anymore. So I had a couple guys who were kind of key people with me in developing this business. And so what I had done, and I make decisions, especially when it comes to scale. I look at momentum as kind of the decision that tells me when to take additional risk. Like when I went into that business full time, I didn't technically have the income at that point in time to pay my full-time salary, but the momentum was clearly there. And I knew that if I could step into that role full time, that it would be easy for me to be able to generate that extra income. So it was the same thing when I was letting go, stepping into the actual visionary role. I saw that momentum and decided that at this point in time, I'm tired of working 80 to 100-hour weeks. I need to move people up to key management positions. And then I'm just going to step out and oversee it at a visionary level, and then let them kind of deal with the operations. And when I did that, everything changed. Like everything got better. Go ahead.
No, when are we? When are we in the time scale? Because you started that in 2012.
Yeah. So this is 2016.
Okay.
The start of 2016 is when I actually decided to kind of step out of the day-to-day operations. And then in 2017, I actually moved 3 hours from the business. So I live in, like, the business is in Richmond. I live in Roanoke. It's like a 3-hour drive. So I actually now I've got about 18 employees, and it just scaled because I had to learn how to let go of being the jack of all the trades within my company, and be the visionary, and be it you need to learn how to be the entrepreneur. The entrepreneur is not setting up lights and getting on ladders and running cables. The entrepreneur is deciding on the visionary, the direction of the business, and crafting out the strategies and the actions and communicating that leadership to the team. Like that's how I perceive the entrepreneur. So yeah, it was 2017. I actually moved away 3 hours from the business. And now we're dealing with this whole crisis going on, which is completely crushing that industry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I imagine.
Yeah. I mean, I was thinking about that, obviously, because Devon, in the event space, he's really busy right now, typically. And he's at home, which is good because he can write his book, which the world needs too. And I'm excited for that. But really so we're in 2017. You've moved 3 hours away, which is something that most entrepreneurs never get to. They never get to that level where they're outside the business looking in, and that's crazy. And so that freed you up. I'm assuming freed you up because you started to pivot in 2018. You decided to go and help people. And like, how did you go from visionary of this thing to where you are now?
So there's a deeper story here that has to be uncovered for this to make sense. When I got started in the special events industry, and this really prompted me to write my first, it's actually a ebook where I talk about multidimensional awareness, and there's learning lessons that I had taken from this experience that prompted a lot of this stuff that I'm talking about. I never thought about, when I started this lighting company, I never thought about the relationship between the commitment and my core, like what it is that I want. I call it the magnetic field. Like, what are the things that really attract you in terms of commitments, and what repels you? I don't regret anything because it uncovered a lot of things about myself that I didn't know beforehand. But what I had realized, like even growing that business, I never was truly happy. Like I always had to force myself to actually build this company in terms of taking action with it, which is really, really tough when it comes to entrepreneurship, when you're having to force yourself and you're like trying to almost fake it till you make it within here, like within the heart. So it got to a point where I had grown it to a level where I knew that this was not for me. And I just did not have interest in really serving in this industry. I was done with the stress. So I was looking for what's the next chapter in my life. So in 2018, I actually thought about starting a software company. And I hired a development team out of Eastern Europe, and we were building a SaaS, which is software as a service. And I was writing a book, and I was going to try to be almost like the Russell Brunson of like the weddings and special events industry. And that's when I started following ClickFunnels, started learning about digital marketing, and doing it completely wrong as far as the actual order of process. Full disclosure, I was screwing up. And because what I had not considered, again, was multidimensional awareness, and I didn't consider certain connection points in alignment with my core. And then I got to a point in 2019, May of 2019, I had spent almost 9 months, I guess, building this software, sinking tens of thousands of dollars into this project. And then I was like, okay, now it's time to be that thought leader. Now it's time to publish, which I should have started at in the beginning, not
Right.
9 months later after. And then I just froze, and I could not, I was getting on podcasts. It had never felt so forced in my entire life. And I just thought, and I told myself, I was like, you know what? This is just resistance because I'm not used to it. And that's what I was like, that's okay. I got to get used to it. I got to get used to speaking. And then after 5 months, when I realized it wasn't getting any better, I decided to actually read the writing on the wall that said, Jake, you don't care about weddings and special events anymore. Leave that mission and go somewhere else. And at that point, I was over $60,000 into the project, probably hundreds, probably over 1,000. Now, I don't know how many hours of time. And I had to swallow my pride and put that project on a shelf and go back to scratch. And
that's really interesting, man. I want to jump in right there because what you just basically laid out for everybody could save them years of struggling. And essentially, you ask yourself the question, am I happy? Right? Instead of just following an opportunity, because in the beginning, that's basically what happened, right? You got into the field and you realized, okay, in the events industry, this is where these people are failing, right? These are the points of failure that I see in the market. And you came in, you saw the opportunity, and you built a business that actually was successful. You got success. And, to some people, that would be like, yeah, I'm successful. Look at me. And they run their company. And then they end up 40 years down the road, miserable, right? Because if you would have continued with that struggle, just telling yourself, it's just resistance. I'll get through it. Whatever, we'll work it out. Because you were sticking to your guns and not asking yourself, am I actually happy? Right? Then who knows what could have happened. So you were able to make that pivot. And I want to illuminate that for everybody listening. Don't just follow the opportunity, right? It's very good to be able to look at it from an opportunity standpoint and to be able to see where those gaps are so that you can fill them. But also ask yourself, man, is this something I actually care about? Is this something I'm actually passionate about and I could see myself doing, for 15, 10, 20 years or something down the line. So I wanted to bring that up real quick, but also let's go ahead and transition because we have another section of the podcast that we just started and it's really cool. So Nathan, go ahead and jump into it. He's got some questions for you.
Yeah, man. We'll try and get back to your story. And I just wanted to say too, something actually really, really intriguing. First of all, Corey, thank you for the insight you brought out. Cause I wasn't thinking about that, but I love it. Because you have to follow your heart and your soul at some point, right? What I thought actually was interesting, the trigger of the heart and soul to me, the way that I look at it is through the lens of authentic market value, is when you started with the lighting industry, you were uncovering the gaps in the market and you were understanding that this is an experience that you're helping to deliver. And you were thinking about every other vendor, how every other vendor can mess up your thing, but you have to make sure your thing is perfect. And when you are serving your clients on that level, that's authentic market value. And it's not about when you don't care. Like you set up a system to serve them like that. But if you don't care about that level of it, because that's how you be successful no matter what the economy is, no matter what's going on. If you have that attitude of when you go through my business, you're going to have success. You're going to have a transformation, which I know is what you're trying to help people do now. Right. But when you're trying to do that, when you know that you're not passionate about that transformation anymore, that's when it's time to move on, right? That's when, and you've got a passion to help transformation in another area, to find the gaps and to really help people. When you got this as a rising entrepreneur, when you find a passion to help people and serve, and you feel like you know how you can make their lives better, that's when you can create a business and a life and everything around that. And so I just, so it just a kind of bring, together about that. And we definitely want to come back. We're going to come back to sort of how you're helping people with the transformational journey right after this really cool section that Corey's let me bring to the game. And so this is called Perils and Pearls. So on the broken road of being an entrepreneur, you've taken part of the path that no one else has taken before. You've seen things that we haven't seen, and you've overcome perils that we haven't faced yet. And so the first question is, what in this twisted, broken journey you've been on so far is the biggest peril that you've come up against that you've had to overcome in your rising entrepreneur journey?
Wow, I love this. This is such a cool addition to your podcast. Let me just start there. I think this is awesome. So there's a quote by Jerzy Gregorik, I think is his name. If you ever watch a TED Talk by Tim Ferriss on Stoicism, you'll hear it. And the quote is, hard choices, easy life. Easy choices, hard life. And the hard choices are normally the ones that you really need to face and the ones you need to make if you want to actually get to a place where things are easier for you in your journey. So I have discovered through my journey that there have been two really notable points of or checkpoints, I guess, which you could call it, where I've had to make some really, really hard choices. And it always stemmed around a relationship that I had with, and they were actually, the first one was with my first, he was my mentor and partner that was really a failure. I had to disband from that. And that was an extremely difficult conversation for me to have. He was actually a family friend. And I wasn't sure like how this was going to affect that friendship, but I was, put it bluntly, I was getting screwed over in many ways. And I needed to leave that partnership. So having that conversation with him and disbanding from it was critical. But this is the thing I had, and I'll give you some numbers just to put things in perspective when it comes to like having relationships with the wrong people and what that can do for your business. For 4 years working with him, I want to preface one thing. This guy was a multimillionaire. He's making $5 million a year in this business. Like vanity metrics were huge.
Right.
And I followed him blindly. And through that mentorship, I made $27,000 in 4 years working under him. When I got rid of that partnership, in the first 3 months, I did 30 grand.
Wow.
So I'm gonna.
Uh-oh. Yep. Did he freeze for you? Can you hear me, Jake?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, then Nathan froze. Of course.
Relationship part of,
hey, Nathan,
was that? Oh,
start back over because you froze up for a second.
Yeah, my internet. Yeah, sorry, man. Am I back?
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah.
Sorry, y'all. So I think it's really interesting. And as rising entrepreneurs, relationships are such a big part of the game, right? And so the peril that can come from relationships, because relationships can be the most like so much more has happened since I partnered with Corey over the last 3 months. So much more has happened with my business, with the development, with the value that we're creating than has happened in years of trying to do it by myself. But then, it's not easy. Like, you know what I mean? Like, Corey, it's not easy. And so, and deciding when it's time to cut it off. Now, as a partnership, it was a failure. As a mentorship, it was a success. Because when you left, you were able to do that $30,000 a month. Like, that's not easy. And by seeing someone who's successful, not that you wouldn't have on your own, but it helps you take that leap of like, this is the thing. And then you saw where it was wrong and you found the failures there, right? And you filled those in your space. So I also want to, sometimes when we because you've been harsh on the word failure with that relationship. And so we've all had bad relationships, but then like when they come up, the energy of how we talk about it as rising entrepreneurs is the energy that we're putting in to our body and ourself. And so I feel like if you can just take that perspective shift, you know what I mean, as one homie to another, and look at it not as like this failure, but this thing where I learned a hard lesson, this mentor that took a little bit of advantage from me, but it helped me really understand this powerful lesson. And so you had a powerful mentorship with somebody and an attempt at a partnership that didn't work. That makes sense?
It's absolutely. And I definitely want to make one thing clear. Like when I look back at that experience, I don't regret it. It taught me a lot. Specifically, the biggest lesson I learned from that was understanding that it's really important that you align yourself with people who have a very similar philosophy and value system. And we didn't at all. Like me and this guy, we did not. We always were butting heads. I'm like, I think it should be done this way. He's like, no, you're wrong. You're wrong. You're wrong. You're wrong. And then finally I said, I think I'm right. And I'm just going to get away from you and do it the way I think it should be done. And that's what caused the thing to take off.
All right, so that's part 2 of Perils and Pearls. Is what's the pearl, right? What's the pearl of wisdom that we can set? And so you gave us 2, and this is really cool. I'm gonna go back into it. I just want to make sure, because we kind of transferred into the pearls section to where this peril of relationships. It can be the biggest blessing to your business, and it can also be a huge drain, and it can kill your business. It can go either way. And so you put this pearl at the beginning of the peril, saying, if you guys aren't in alignment with values, with morals, with vision, with direction, if it's not all in alignment, if you're butting heads on all these different things, if you're in alignment on most things and then you're butting heads, that's a good challenge. But if you're butting heads all the time on all the things, then that pearl lets you know, let me get out of this sooner than later, because later is going to hurt more. Right. And then you said, okay, but now if you're in it and you're dedicated to it and you've put everything into it, you're connected with your family and everything else, and you see no way out of it. The pearl here is get out anyway. Like, you know what I'm saying? If you are in there and you find it draining your life force and draining who you are and killing your spirit, right? Is that then bite the hard bullet, have the hard conversation, and that's the pearl to get out of that peril once you're in it. So you gave us one to keep us from getting into it and one to get out, and I think that's really awesome. So do you want to add to that pearl or those pearls at all? You don't have to, but
no, I think relationships. I mean, in business, I see this post come up all the time on Facebook news feeds. Like, what's the most important skill an entrepreneur should have? And I always give the same answer every time: people skills.
Right.
You are in, like, look at all the people you have to deal with in business. You got clients, you got partners, you've got vendors, you have, like these type of arrangements where you're actually getting interviewed. Like, it's all based around relationships with people. So if you haven't taken the time to identify the type of relationship you want to have with the people you're connecting with, whether it be, and there's different levels, right? There's partnerships and customers. Those are different types of relationships. Just be intentional about identifying what's the type of relationship I want to have with those people. And then that's going to save you a lot of headache, because and this is the thing, and this is the second big hard decision I made. I hired a really, really good friend. I don't know what it is with me and hiring friends. I got a problem, I guess, but it's like I had one of my best friends I hired. He actually ended up becoming a general manager for my lighting company. I ended up having to fire him because he was so misaligned with core values. And he was like, my company was on the brink of imploding because I was about to lose a lot of key people because he was just going around destroying the culture. And I think James Wedmore says, it's almost like taking like a drop of black ink and dumping it into like a glass of water. When you drop toxicity into your culture with one, and it only takes one person to do this, it just completely will turn all that water black.
That's a really good analogy. I really like that visual. Yeah, because it's true. It's like,
and I like that third pearl, right?
One bad person is like cancer to the company, and
absolutely
can wreck everything.
Cut it as soon as you see it. Like,
right. And so, real quick, I just want to say, like, I think that's normal, right? To want to hire your friends and the people around you. Like, you want, they're your friends, they're your homies, they're your loved ones. You want to bring them in, and help them out because you've got something that's working. But at the end of the day, like, your business is not something that should be fueled by emotion, right? It should be fueled by the numbers and what's actually taking place. So that's tough, man. But you were able to learn that lesson. Now I need to go ahead and transition, guys. I feel like, Jake, we need to bring you back on for a part 2 because there's so much to talk about, man. But I want to get into Brainiactics, and I want to hear, what you got going on over there, and then kind of, talk about that. And so that way, if people, find that to be something that they want to do, they can definitely get in touch with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate that. This is, I just launched this, by the way, on Friday. Last Friday, on my birthday, by the way, 36th birthday was my birthday.
Nice,
myself.
nice, perfect time to make a transfer.
Yeah.
So Brainiactics is a new mission where I'm out to help entrepreneurs grow a thriving online knowledge business where results are measured by transformations over transactions. So that's kind of the encompassing mission of what I'm trying to accomplish here. So at this point in time, because I have just launched, I'm still like in building mode, and I'm connecting, I'm building relationships and finding, that community to serve. So I just launched a Facebook group, and that's really the core place right now where people can kind of come and connect with me. And the Facebook group's called Brainiac Moguls. So Brainiac Moguls is a place where I'm going to have weekly. I call it, and I'm, by the way, I'm a complete nerd, just so you know. Like I really just, I'm a huge nerd. I look like I'm probably a Marine right now. I've got the shirt. People ask me like, were you in the military? I'm like, no, I'm just a nerd that loves America. And so I started this Facebook group, and then like, I'm really big on, growing your brilliance, and I love to read. And I've always wanted to like create a container for learning and reading books. So like every Friday I do Nerd Out Fridays, where I actually take a book every month and I go through it and I talk about key takeaways in the group, and I open up the live stream. People can come in and collaborate. And this is just one idea. There's a lot of stuff I'm doing within this group. But for this particular thing, it's like with Nerd Out Fridays, like this is a place where, when you're reading a book, sometimes it's hard to retain that knowledge and that information. But when you actually collaborate on it and discuss and rally around the takeaways, then you're able to really capture that genius and be able to apply it to your life.
Get the transformation of the book rather than just the transaction of the book.
Absolutely.
Yeah, man. I feel that. I'm glad that's really cool. So you got a community. So one more time, the Facebook group, what's it called? Because this is a place where we can go and we can understand more about the transformational journey to take our clients on, so we can serve them at a higher and better level, which Rising Entrepreneurs, we're always about. So this is a place where you can go and get in-depth nerdy stuff on how to take it to the next level and really serve your clients. So where can they go get that?
Yeah. So I've got, if you just go to connectwithjake.com, that will take you to my Facebook group. That's kind of a vanity domain that I created. So wherever is the best place to connect with me at that point in time, and which is right now, is going to be the Facebook group. Awesome. Just connectwithjake.com. That way in 5 years, it might not be Facebook groups anymore.
Right.
And this podcast is still out rolling. So connectwithjake.com might be something different.
That's smart, bro. That's smart. Thinking about the evergreen for sure. So before we actually jumped on, I want to dive into a little bit more of the results, measuring results by transformations over transactions. We were kind of talking about that before we jumped on the interview. Explain a little bit more what you mean by that, because that's really powerful.
So in the knowledge business, there is this intentional way of serving where you're trying to get people to a specific desired after state, right? Like we're coaches or we're creating courses, and the intention behind it is to say, I can take you from point A to point B, and there's a transformation that happens there. And I guess the big awakening for me was, and again, now we're uncovering gaps here. So I'm going to kind of talk a little bit about some of the gaps that I personally have uncovered, not only through my own experience, but also through a lot of conversations with other entrepreneurs. I looked at so I have bookmarked in my Safari all the courses because that's the best way I can kind of keep it all organized. And I went through and I was like, okay, I've got 25 courses that I've acquired over the past 2 years. And then I dove another level deep and I thought, okay, well, how much of this have I actually done? And there was only, I think the one that I've done the most was like about 30% completion. And then I was like, okay, so let me go and actually, is this just me that this is happening to, or is this other people? So I went online and I looked and it was actually less than 10% completion rates was like the standard with all courses. And I think it's a little bit higher for people who pay for courses. It's like somewhere between 10 to 20%. And in my mind, I'm thinking this seems like a big problem because if people are buying information and not actually putting it to action, like that's not a completion rate or a success rate I would be proud of. I would expect to see more results from people who are acquiring this information and putting it to action. So I started taking that to another place of like, let's break this down a little bit further and think about where this can be improved to kind of increase customer success rates, create more transformation. And really it comes down to implementation, right? Because with knowledge and information, you can have all the information in the world, but if it's never put in motion or put to action, it's really has no value. Right. It's just information in your head. There's no value in just having a lot of knowledge if you're not actually applying it anywhere. And in entrepreneurship specifically, because it's just such a crazy journey and there's so much movement going on and shifts and things happening, that I have found, and even when I kind of reflected back with my first business, I have found that the best way of learning is learning in motion. As you're in motion, you're actually learning tactics and strategies and principles as you're in motion. So with Brainiactics, this is about taking tactics and knowledge and information. I'm creating implementation models that helps people put that information, that knowledge into motion so they're able to get those transformational results that they're trying to desire. And that's that gap that I'm kind of finding right now, is that we need to learn how to actually implement, like help our customers implement on what we're teaching them.
That's awesome,
and having them sit static in front of a computer screen for 3 or 4 hours at a time, that's not motion. That's static. That's sitting still. Right. So what can we do to kind of get people up, getting them moving and taking action as they're learning? So that's my mission. Like, I'm really focusing on the implementation piece of it. And that's where I'm trying to serve. And Brainiactics, obviously, it's the knowledge industry. And that's the specific sub-market that I am focusing on.
Sweet.
Well, I love it, man.
I love it. So, sorry, Nathan, we got to go ahead and get to that last question. But everybody, if you want to check out Brainiacs, we definitely recommend that you do that. You can go over to connectwithjake.com, and that should take you right over to the Facebook group, and you can get into that community. Jake, thank you again so much, man, for everything that you've shared. I'm sorry we have to kind of wrap it up. Like I said, maybe we should bring you on for part 2, and then we can finish this up.
Yeah.
But,
for
Nathan
sure. You got 2 minutes.
Yeah, Nathan has one more question for you.
So here's our final thing is you got to leave a final pearl for yourself 5 to 10 years ago, different than the pearl you gave us earlier. All right. So you got 2 minutes, the best pearl. You can think about it. You don't have to be quick on it, but give it to us. What's the pearl you'd leave for yourself 5 to 10 years ago?
So 5 to 10 years ago, another pearl that's different than, I guess, the relationship.
Yeah, but for yourself specifically, if you were talking to yourself 5 to 10 years ago, what would you tell yourself?
Oh gosh, that'd be a long conversation.
You only get one pearl. You got 2 minutes to tell yourself. Yeah.
Let me see here. Let me think. What I would tell myself is you need to, and this is something new, I feel like that's kind of come to myself recently in how I want to serve, is you need to think about how to get to your next outcome just as much as you need to think about the long-term vision. Like, they kind of play hand in hand. And I think sometimes people get really caught up in the like what's the big vision here? And then they start losing sight of like, okay, that's great, but what do we need to do right now? Like, what's the next outcome that we need to have right now that's going to lead us there? And you get really overwhelmed by the thoughts of the big vision And if you can just break it down by like, what's the next outcome? Like, cause that's what we're doing. We're just taking a journey. Stop thinking about entrepreneurship as a destination and start thinking about it as a journey, and just you're placing outcomes right in front of you, step by step by step by step. And when you get really focused on that, you have it's almost like a superpower of avoiding shiny objects, because you're so focused on the next outcome, the next outcome, the next outcome, that when a shiny object comes at you, you're like, nope, you're not part of my path of continuity to my legacy. You don't belong here. And that's where I start talking about the transformational journey and how that's different from the transactional journey, where you're convinced the shiny objects. You shouldn't be getting convinced the shiny objects. You should be getting enrolled to outcomes.
That's awesome, man. There you guys.
That's the thing I would have saved a lot of money and time if I would have told, mid-20s Jake, don't, keep focus, outcome to outcome to outcome on your path of continuity.
That's brilliant, bro. That is a perfect way to wrap it up. Thank you so much for that value. That was awesome, Jake. I really appreciate your time today.
Yeah,
and thank you for sharing it with the Rising Entrepreneur community.
Absolutely,
Thanks,
brother.
Guys. I appreciate it. It's a lot of fun.
All right, my man. We will. We'll probably have to bring Jake on for a part 2 because there's so much more that we want to dig into. But yeah, thank you, brother, for coming on and sharing your time and your expertise and your stories with us, and also being so transparent with your story. We really appreciate that, because those journeys, those insights are what help other rising entrepreneurs along their journey. So thanks again, brother, and we'll definitely catch you on the next one.
Thank you. Appreciate
Later.
it. See ya.